Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Public Podcast. I'm your host, Kinsey Grant. The Public Podcast brings you in-depth interviews with leaders in business, finance, and technology, which is why I am super stoked to welcome today's guest. Will Ralston is the CEO of Single Point Partners. Their ticker is SING on OTC markets, and Single Point is a renewable energy and sustainable lifestyle provider. Will, I am so thrilled to have you here today. How's it going?
It's going great, Kenzie, and I really appreciate you having us on and look forward to having a great conversation about everything, Single Point has its hands in these days.
As do I. I'm super excited to hear more about what you're doing, and especially some recent news and all sorts of exciting developments you guys have going on as well. So I guess with that, we can jump right in. Are you ready to answer some questions?
Absolutely. Fire away.
All right. So I'm going to start off with an interesting statistic. Public recently conducted a survey that found that clean energy was the most cited area of interest for retail investors, which is super interesting. I think super compelling in terms of user behavior for anybody who wants to be an investor or become an investor. But with that in mind, tell me a little bit about Single Point and your future plans as a public company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the top of mind, attitude and just thought process around energy and investors being interested in renewables such as solar, EV charging, energy storage has just exploded, especially over, the last couple of years and even over the last, 6 to 9 months, as we've seen energy costs just soaring and, all the different natural disasters happening and really wanting to create redundancy around that. So we're seeing the grids change. We're seeing national infrastructure need to be rebuilt around a more renewable system to ensure that we have always on power, to ensure that we can meet the energy needs and demands to offset, the different carbon, initiatives that are out there. So Single Point as a company is really helping address that by making acquisitions in the renewable energy space. And those acquisitions consist of the companies that are installing the products out there for solar energy storage and battery backup. We've made a few great acquisitions over the last year, and we're really excited because of just the internal organic growth of those acquisitions that we've made and really being able to establish that footprint moving forward as a leader in the space. And that's what's really exciting about Single Point and where we're at as a public company and where we look to go in the future as we continue to grow our footprint throughout the US and eventually internationally.
Totally. And with that eye to the future, I would love to hear your thoughts on the uplisting process. I understand that uplisting has been a big part of the Single Point story over the last couple of weeks. So tell me a little bit more about the process to uplist and starting with, what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, Single Point's traded on OTC under the ticker symbol SING. And we've been working towards getting to a listed exchange, such as NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange. And we've really been pushing for getting listed on NASDAQ and making that process happen. And part of that is, that process can be ambiguous at points, but there's a lot of different filings that happen. There's a lot of different moving parts that can sometimes be moving targets. But we continue to do what we have to do as a public company in order to achieve those goals, which is, staying fully reporting, giving that transparency to investors and that growth and showing that, we have the ability to become a NASDAQ listed company, which is ultimately what we're working to do. So really what set the foundation for that is these transformational acquisitions, our most recent one being Boston Solar. They've been around for 10 years, 17.8 million last year. We expect a significant increase in this year's filings that are due to come out soon. So we're really excited from that standpoint that we've built a foundational business that even with the market headwinds we're seeing today in the public markets, we're seeing solar and all of our all of our businesses grow even within those headwinds. And it's really because we're in two majorly backed federally backed initiatives within solar and energy, as well as the indoor air quality space, which is another place where we've made some phenomenal acquisitions. And, that's all going to lead to us being able to achieve the goal of becoming a NASDAQ company.
Totally. And you mentioned some of the nitty gritty of the business that I want to get into first, and then we'll hit on the Inflation Reduction Act and the relationship that your company and really any company in your space might have with the government and the moves that are being made in Washington. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about single point strategy. You mentioned that these transformative deals, these M&A deals, have been really meaningful for the trajectory of your company. And I'm curious about how you see those kind of coming into play in your broader strategy, knowing that clean energy is a pretty big topic with a lot of different pockets and players and different subcategories. Tell me a little bit about where Single Point fits in strategically in that broader landscape, and how the deals that you have made over the last recent memory have impacted that strategy.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Is the strategy and where we fit in is making those acquisitions that are going to be, the companies that are actually installing the different products out there. So we're going to be, the boots on the ground, the companies that are leading the charge with great customer service, with the ability to grow within their markets. Solar is so fragmented between the different states and even down to, the different counties within the state. So it's very difficult to say, okay, we've got a great established business in, Boston, such as we do, and then take that same, business and try to transplant it and open the same thing in Florida, because just the local laws and everything else are so much different. So with the solar industry being so fragmented in that sense, our acquisition strategy is to go out, find and identify the key the key opportunities in that market that have been in business for a number of years, have great reputation, superior customer service, and really value the lifetime of a customer, because we know we're going to come back and say, hey, it's time for new panels. Would you like EV charging ads, energy storage ads, and be able to go back to that same customer because they had such a great experience. And through that acquisition strategy, Single Point itself will grow and continue to maximize its market opportunity, but also those businesses, because we're able to help fund them with working capital, give them different back-end office supplies that help lower overhead costs. Those companies will also organically grow themselves. So that's our key into this market, and where we're really looking to unlock the value is by consolidating into different markets, through acquisition.
Right, right. I'm curious about how demand has shifted, knowing that you are using these acquisitions to really expand into different areas, both of the country and of the solar industry. How do you see demand changing in your experience leading this company?
Well, one thing you hit on earlier was the IRA bill, right? And that's really still being worked on, still understood. We're seeing the values and the benefits. The key to that bill for us right now immediately is that the solar tax credits that were available for homeowners were waterfalling and basically going away. That bill not only increased those tax incentives, but it also extended them for 10 years. So it solidifies a market, for the next 10 years in the residential solar space, as well as gives people, more back. So we've seen more demand because the IRA bill has been so much, there's been so much discussion about it. So many more customers are there aware of what's available. Overall, only 3 to 4% of the solar market has been tapped right now across the US. And so there's a huge opportunity to continue making that market penetration out there, gaining new customers. Our real-time experience and new customers and that expansion happening is we've had one of the best Januaries that the company's had in its 10-year history. And so we're just seeing so much more activity come through. And that's partially because of the IRA. That's partially because energy costs have just soared in the Northeast, especially. It's been very expensive up there. So all these different opportunities and these accretive businesses that we've been acquiring and the moves that we're currently making all have led to us being able to organically grow the Boston Solar Company, which has been our first, major acquisition out there. And with that acquisition, that brought credibility and legitimacy to what we're doing. And now we've had other companies of the same caliber saying, hey, we would love to be a part of this story. Let's start figuring out how we can work together. So that's what's really exciting about over here is it drives, it's kind of a self-propelling, perpetual deal that as we continue to grow, more people will see what we're doing and more opportunities will come to us.
Right. That snowball effect is certainly real. I'm curious about the demand growth. Is it bigger in B2B or B2C for you right now? Where are you seeing the bulk of that demand coming from?
Yeah, we're 85% residential. So we're direct to, we're going right to the homeowners. We do have commercial projects. We've rolled out, we actually did Fenway Park, their solar installation for the Boston Red Sox and MGM Hall. Very exciting project, very noteworthy project. And we have more projects coming like that to us. We have the bread and butter though is residential, and that's what we've mainly focused on. And the commercial stuff, and it's smaller, light commercial. We're not into utility scale. We're looking at small commercial footprint, and that's all been coming inbound. But that market's got a little bit of a different dynamic as far as supply chain stuff goes, projects taking longer, and overall just approvals. And again, that comes back to the understanding the market and being able to make acquisitions within other markets that really understand their local rules. Because coming into, say, Boston and Massachusetts, commercial installation is a whole different ballgame than it is out here in Arizona where I'm sitting right now.
Definitely. Yeah, it's cool to hear about Fenway too. Very, very exciting. And you mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. I would love to talk a little bit about how that kind of impacts renewables as a bigger, broader sector. To your point, this Inflation Reduction Act did a lot for, to set up solar as a great option for the next decade or so. But it, in general, was a big boom for clean energy, broadly speaking. With that in mind, I'm curious to hear about how you see solar comparing to other sources and resources for renewable energy offerings. Where does solar fit into this broader renewables space?
No, the IRA bill has been deemed the single largest historical investment into clean energy, right? And there's going to be multiple winners that come out of that space. And solar has proved itself to be one of those. I think it's going to take a collection of multiple different types of, renewable energies. You can get into hydrogen, you can get into nuclear. There's a lot of these different opportunities and technologies that will thrive and flourish. But what we know right now is solar is an opportunity that can be placed anywhere, right? We've seen that the different studies come out that if you used even just 2% of the available land in the US, you could power enough homes through the utilization of solar, right, throughout the United States. So it's a small footprint play, and that allows really even residences, in residential buildings or ownership to really control and own their own power and create redundancy, safety, energy cost savings, all within the footprint of their own premise, right? So we see solar as being that opportunity that's here right now, and yes, there will be future ones, and it's going to, at the end of the day, like I said, it's going to be a collection of all these different technologies that help us meet these carbon goals that the federal government has set to achieve, and solar is going to be one of the major impacts of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love, Will, if you don't mind, like let's step back here for a second. I want you to take off the CEO hat, right? And put on the investor hat. This is obviously something that investors, to that point earlier about the interest from investors in clean energy, that they're really, really keen to understand a little bit better. I'm curious if you're an investor who's trying to understand the opportunities for investment in clean energy and renewable energy in general, how are you viewing this post-Inflation Reduction Act investing landscape, knowing that, we're also dealing with some pretty significant headwinds as retail investors? How would you be thinking about investing in clean energy and renewable energy right now as an investor?
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking at companies that have shown strong growth, right? That's going to be the number one thing is if you're investing, and, obviously this is not investing advice or anything else, but if you're looking at these companies, you got to look at companies that have shown strong fundamental growth, the ability to continue to push through these headwinds, because there's going to be a lot of ups and downs within this market that we've seen, and it just doesn't seem that really anybody can pinpoint where it seems to be going. So you want something that's going to be there for the long haul. You want people that are working to make the difference in the industry. With our acquisition, Boston Solar, again, 10 years of credibility out there. Hundreds of Google reviews. The company has continued to perform and grow, and is contributing, to meet profitability. So that's going to be key. And, like anything else that we do when we evaluate acquisitions, we really want to see what leadership is doing. Have they been known, what's their history look like? What's the future look like? What's their plan? Can they communicate it? So these are the different things that we're looking for when we make investments and acquire companies. And ultimately, when I step back and look at it, it's very similar for us, right? I want to be able to identify growth in strong markets, and we've been able to do so, which is why we've got into two markets that are federally funded and have had major historical investments. I mean, one we haven't hit on is indoor air quality, which the government also put $121 billion towards K through 12 schools just for air purification, right? And, we haven't got to that topic yet, but these are huge initiatives that are federally backed, federally funded, and really, you're looking to identify those companies of, who's going to be there in the next 5 to 10 years, who's established themselves, who's, at least got a little bit of an opportunity to push through that door that's halfway open and really, break out into the market and be a key supplier or a key provider within that space.
Definitely. And on this topic of growth in spite of headwinds, be they, circumstantial or economic, I want to talk for a second here about one thing that I think comes up a lot when we're considering the future, especially of the renewables sector, and that's the supply chain. And of course, supply chain issues have been a topic of conversation across industries for anybody in the public community, anybody who is an investor. I would love to hear your perspective as an operator on how supply chains have become challenging or have been challenges that you've risen to meet for your company. Tell me a little bit more about how you're facing that future.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first part of that, you talked about different market headwinds. And the one thing that I want to continue to reiterate is while we've seen market headwinds, we're always happy to report that the businesses have actually outperformed and continued to outperform. So building that foundational fundamental business has been just a huge change for Single Point in general. But overall, with the supply chains, yes, everybody struggled with solar supply chains, especially in this space. But it was more impactful last summer. And really when we were seeing, different shipments being stopped at different ports for trying to figure out, where panels came from, when there's different tariff discussions about what's going to be the impact of those tariffs on imported solar equipment. And really those have started to loosen, especially on the residential side. We're not seeing as much of an issue in obtaining the panels that we need. But back to your point on the commercial side of things as well, that's really where there's a little bit more of a supply chain issue. And that's because of just a supplier constraint. There's not a whole lot of suppliers out there that make these commercial size, what we call inverters. And so that's really where we feel the supply chain pinch. But again, our bread and butter is in that residential side right now. 85% of our business is there. We've seen that business grow by 35, 40% over last year, which is huge. We're really happy with where that business has gone post acquisition and where it can go in the future. So supply chains aside, we've been able to push through those factors and come out stronger on the other side.
Definitely. And I've got one more question here for you. Well, it sounds like, you've been really adamant about engaging with retail investors and with the investing community in general, especially with the potential for an uplisting happening down the line here. Where can anybody who's listening to this stay up to date with what's going on at Single Point? News, updates, progress on uplisting, anywhere you want to send our listeners to get more information?
Well, yeah, you'll definitely want to go to our website at singlepoint.com and subscribe to our email letter. That way, you'll get on top of the most eventful things. We're pretty active on our Twitter page. We try to do a great job updating there. And then ultimately, we hope that through this partnership with public.com, we'll be able to help, drive more awareness, because I'll be the first to admit, it's between running the business and everything else, we got to do this as well. And I got to do a better job as well at it. But overall, if you follow us on public.com with that profile as well, you'll be in the know of everything that Single Point is doing. So that's probably the best channels to come and follow us on.
All right. Well, that sounds good. And with that, thank you so much, Will Ralston, CEO of Single Point, for your time today. This has been such a great conversation, and I've really enjoyed learning more about what you're doing, what Single Point is doing, and what comes next. Got to be a super exciting time to have your job. So thank you again so much for all of your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Kinsey, and appreciate you hosting us today.
Absolutely. And for everybody out there listening, thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back next month with even more from the renewables and sustainability sectors. Have a good one.